Hello, Dwayne. It's Rose, your neighbor. I know it's late, and I know that I tend to be a little anxious about small things. I apologize for that, but I'm getting a bit worried. I haven't seen you out of the house in about 3 weeks. Is everything all right? Could you call me just to let me know everything's fine?
I just finished playing Visage and I am now permanently brain damaged. I actually think I developed a proxy case of schizophrenia, and I don't think I'll ever see the light of day again. This game was developed by SadSquare Studio, and it was released on October 30th, 2020. It's a psychological survival horror game that takes you to your limits of patience and detective skills. We play as Dwayne, who lives in a house that inhabited 3 people that had mental illnesses. The game is divided into 4 chapters, the first 3 dedicated to those very people, and the last one is kind of a put-it-all-together chapter. Right off the bat, I'm going to hit you with the reality of this game, so then I can follow it up with the things that make it work. This game is very fucking difficult. At least for me it was. So the point of the game, I'd say, is that the house you are in is like a puzzle, and it's very fragmented. The game rarely holds your hand as far as giving you hints as to how to solve it. Let me give you an example. You find an object that triggers a chapter. You then have about 10 to 20 other objects you have to find in no discernible order. You have to remember where you've been. You have to remember where things are. You have to be weary of your resources. You have to make sure that you don't spend too long in the dark, or else paranormal shit starts to consume you. You have to be able to absorb the few hints that the game does give you. For example, there are hints during the chapters that direct you or should suggest to you through imagery where you should go next, but this can often be hard to interpret. The game took me longer than I thought it would to complete, and it was frustrating at times because I started to question myself as to whether I was stupid or the game was just that difficult. But this is why this is actually a great mechanic. The horror in this game is done well. It's disturbing, it's jumpy where it needs to be, it's packed with tension, but relieving enough to be enjoyable to those who have a primary leaning toward gameplay. It also has a very distinct purpose. The game isn't just trying to scare us, it's trying to horrify us by taking real-world circumstances and molding them into the abstract. For example, something rather mundane like a cassette tape or a pill bottle will start to take on new meanings in this world. The game is constantly making commentaries on the destructive nature of some of these elements, and at times it can seem like beating a dead horse. Like, we get it, pills and alcohol are bad, but at the same time that's what the art demands. If you're committed to trying to use horror to express the insanity of addiction, or the terrifying emotional fluctuations of a woman with schizophrenia, then you kind of need to keep beating that horse. My point is, while a lot of the messaging from the game itself can be repetitive, I think it's necessary for the game to work. The game has an intense focus on these themes, and they represent them quite well in almost all aspects. The entire game itself, if you pay close attention, is actually an extended metaphor, which I won't tell you, but you will absolutely know once you get to the ending. It's a slow, calculated kind of horror, loaded with the aforementioned imagery, but takes great measures to ensure independence to the player. While this is very much SadSquare's story, it's you who is at the center of the perception. Therefore, SadSquare took it upon themselves to build you a world where you can take as little or as long as you like to solve it. You can rush through the game on account of the fear, you can bask in the horror and let it add to the wonderful immersion. SadSquare made it a point to make this game a modular horror experience, and while that may breed moments of long confusion, it also creates those satisfying moments where we are able to conquer the horrors of another person's world. So you have the horror, and you have a story with distinct purpose and substance. The mechanics of the game are pretty simple too, and take a kind of traditional approach to implementing them. For example, candles will burn over time and lighters will lose fuel, and you have to hold these items in your hands or else they go in your inventory. Some of the handling of the mechanics in-game can get a little clunky and repetitive, so keep that in mind. You'll find yourself misclicking a bit before you get a hang of the system, but it's not too annoying. The music in the game is kind of tethered to cutscenes, moments of intense horror, and specific in-game elements that trigger music. Other than that, you're kind of subjected to the quiet ambiance of the house. The times that you do hear the music, it's always tastefully done, and blends perfectly with the circumstance in which it's used. There are even times where music is used to convey irony, or the opposite of the environment shown, and those moments are done well too. When you zoom out and look at how the game functions from start to finish, what you'll see is there are peaks and valleys of horror, discovery, and plot. These tend to be spaced out rather evenly, although as I said earlier, those valleys of discovery tend to be way larger than the rest. You'll be playing detective a lot, and you'll be playing it in a world where reality and impossibility are one and the same. So when you go about solving the puzzles of the house and beyond, it's okay to use logic to see your way through. But I'm not so sure that that's the best way to go about it, given the fact that there are many illogical elements and places that kind of make the puzzle-solving process more difficult. This is especially true as you progress further in the game and your perception starts to decohere, and you start to see the full weight of what a descent into mental illness looks like from the combined perspectives of these chapters. What started off as logical steps became more like trying to walk your way through a maze that only monsters built to torture you. When you see your way out of that maze, you will remember what you just played, and you'll most likely want to play it again, just as I will. I enjoyed this game, and its fresh spin on horror and mystery. I think this is a must-play for not just horror fans, but for all gamers that would like to engage in a long, thrilling, mysterious experience. 8 out of 10.